Click the links to join the channel here over at subscribe so I can get a mailbox and mail me some comics. So Marvel Comics censors two Predator stories from forthcoming omnibus for objectionable content. Censorship is globalism. You can't have the left wing in general without censorship because they have bad ideas and they do bad things. And with free speech, people will simply discuss it and the system can correct itself. Censorship is different because it creates a metastable system where a system should, from stability to a brief time and metastable and then go back to stable or unstable or failure. The longer the censorship goes on, the less stable the system gets because the narrative is getting too far from reality. And eventually you need to punish free speech. Otherwise, everyone will point out that the emperor has no clothes. Censorship is very powerful, especially now because in globalist-controlled America, Europe, Canada, Australia, some of it is indirect power, at least in America, when the enemy is the media, the social media, and the NGOs that actually run the country and can destroy your life, sort of as a proxy for a government power. In the rest of the West, it can be more direct government power, where the government will use force and violence to stop people speaking of ideas that they don't want spoken, or even something as lighthearted and silly as Count Dankula a couple of years ago. It's kind of how he got famous, where they're flexing their power by saying no, some things are haram. And that should have awakened more people, but they didn't think it was serious enough. Probably because they were never educated on the seriousness of censorship. Because Europeans would have to stop and ask themselves, like, wait a minute, how come we don't have free speech laws delineated in our, I don't know what they call their constitution over there, their founding documents? Like, why don't they have that as the dogma? So it's probably not, the importance of free speech is probably not taught, because then you have to compare them to the American Bill of Rights, and it put the English people, UK people, in a very weird spot, because they're saying that no, we trust the government to censor our ideas, because that's what most of Europe is saying. Certain narratives have to be maintained, so the slaves are not allowed speech that gets in the way of the government and the NGOs that mostly control the government. It's horrifying when you think about it, because it would be easier to just have free speech. What happens when the government does bad things, or they have bad policies? How do you change it and bring awareness to it if the government can use violence to stop you speaking? Because the logical extent of the censorship is always going to be men with guns coming to your door. You don't. That's why they have hate speech laws. Any speech the government and puppet masters don't want uttered, they simply classify as hate and send men with guns to arrest you. And sometimes just delete you to take care of the problem. The deeper issue is the ability to control a narrative. You can see this phenomenon just on social media, where the platforms ban anything. Any wrong thing that upsets the masters, which actually, in the case of lesson we've learned on YouTube, is it's not the end of the world, because it created Rumble, which is better than YouTube but not great, and then BitChute, which is very good, and then Odyssey, which was amazing. And the funny thing about Odyssey is, like, it was a live streaming platform, monetized, functions very well. And it's a video hosting platform. It has everything in place, and it's free speech. Oh, ran into some trouble with the government. That's weird. Yeah, because it had the library token, and the Security and Exchange Commission went after it. So that the fines were so great that they had to just give the company up. So the government has it in receivership. So they're running it now, I guess. So it was kind of weird. What a coincidence. It was a free speech platform where you're able to drop red pills and honk pills, and if you're in Europe, you can get around it using a VPN. I'm sure it's all on the up and up. And the other kind of weird thing was Omegle was it was set off not like a free speech platform, because I don't think it had its terms of service. People were getting kicked off, but there were people on Omegle who were getting out red pill messages. And so they shut down. So Omegle and Odyssey kind of shut down around the same time. It's kind of interesting. Odyssey didn't shut down, but it's up in the air, and the government's probably going to sell it to somebody, which means they're going to just turn it into a Rumble. You're like, but I mean, the terms of services will be the same as Rumble, so it can be sold, it can be downloaded off the App Store. Yeah. So, I mean, so you just took away the best free speech live streaming platform uh, online. Yeah. We don't want you to have free speech. Oh, that's weird. A government that doesn't trust its people with free speech. Um, Anyway, so the people, what happens with censorship is people start to self-censor because the masters are sending them the message that some things are haram. But the problem with is that self-censorship carries off the platform into real life, and when things can't be discussed and fixed, they just get worse. So the social media platforms are setting the rules for society as a whole, which is a problem. That's why free speech should legally apply to the internet, and our politicians have had 20 plus years of the internet, people being commonly comfortable on the internet, and to address those issues. And it's like, yeah, they don't seem to be too concerned about the First Amendment. Because in political issues, if these shadowy NGOs decide the narrative, then they're going to control elections because they can just ban certain politicians and their supporters and the narrative that they're pushing, which they've already done. No NGO should have that much power, but of course, our politicians in power now don't want you to have free speech. They hate the First Amendment. Social media has the power to literally create taboos based on nothing. A prime example to show their power and how naive and brainwashed kids are is the current post-Trump fascination with the fashionable guys and calling everyone, fashionable, a Hugo Boss, that kind of stuff. That wasn't a thing pre-2016 Trump. And all these woke SJWs who call you fashionable, their entire understanding of the concept is from Hollywood. And a little bit is coming from the brainwashed, blue-haired government teacher. They've created something out of nothing because the government and the puppet masters that control the government want people in a constant state of fear and confusion, always worried about being canceled, so they stay within the navigational guidelines. They're doing this to control speech, which means that they control ideas. They tried this in 2016 to manipulate the narrative to the extent that a vote for Trump was a vote for the corporal, the landscape painter. It's why they blew up the January 6th peaceful protest and tried to call it an insurrection, which is actually what that recent Colorado ruling based to remove a candidate from the ballot was based on the J6 peaceful protest, where they took a guided tour and they go, no, we're going to call it an insurrection. That's why the media started manipulating this narrative right from the beginning, because they focus on a peaceful protest and they ignore literally years and billions of dollars and thousands of people deleted because of BLM violence. Not just directly was like 50 people, but indirectly the rise in violence because of the BLM stuff is over 10,000 people were indirectly deleted. Congratulations. So in 2024, they want to be able to get people fired for voting Trump, or just not even signaling hard enough that they're voting for Biden or whoever they decide to put in at the last moment. Maybe, I can't imagine Kamala, so maybe Newsom or something. Where if you have a manga, what's it called? MAGA in your Facebook or something, your social media, the soy boys will just dogpile your employer and get you fired. So people will self-censor their right-wing support, so that sends a message the country is farther left, because the soft globalist power that actually runs the country is able to control elections simply by using social media to control the narrative. And no, you won't vote your way out of this soft tyranny, which has led to hard tyranny. There's no conventional political solution because the social media can influence elections, so you really need to form groups. If Disney is able to censor stories that aren't diverse and inclusive, they're sending a message to susceptible, easily brainwashed people that diversity and inclusion is good and the opposite is bad, when it's just the opinion of a few insane, power-hungry globalists running the industry. A wrong opinion. Objectively, you can see that in terms of return on investment. People don't want diverse, inclusive stories. They want to see their own tribe. Most people are nationalists, but billion-dollar Bolshevik companies have so much power and influence, they're able to make in-group preference a negative thing, at least to susceptible people. it's not too hard to break people out of the diversity brainwashing, because all you have to do is stand up on social media and call it cancer, and that you don't want to see diversity, you want tribalism. True, they call you istophobic, and you just ignore it and keep talking about how lame diversity is, because they don't have a counter argument to an opinion other than a personal attack. And I say easily susceptible people and not low IQ people, because many people who are to the right of the bell curve are easily susceptible to brainwashing, because they have a high agreeability index, and they're high trust people. They're not sure how to reject government and media propaganda, which is funny because the left wing was when it was safe to be against the media and the government, and to big tobacco scientists and environmental scientists, and go, they're all paid off by interest groups. Yeah, I don't trust the media, the government, all these paid off scientists. And then suddenly, of course, the Wu flu came along, and they all got on board because the masters told them to get on board, and partially it's like they made the cattle afraid, and then offered them a solution. It's like, oh, so you trust the science now, but you didn't trust it, for the environmental scientists and the petroleum industry scientists and the asbestos industry. You get the idea. It's all nonsense. And the left wing is like, nobody wants to stop and think for themselves, because that's a lot of peer pressure they have to resist. The thing is, to resist, you have to be a little stubborn and disagreeable to not give in to peer pressure. But left-wing people in general are herd mentality people, where the people they're mostly afraid of are the other left-wingers who will exclude them from the herd. And social media will reinforce this by canceling people who ask too many questions. That's why I seriously say you won't vote your way out of this, and literally form groups, because the tech infrastructure financial system is too powerful to fix, and you're never going to do anything as an individual. The woke fear globalist control system is the media tech financial system, all made possible by low trust people manipulating high trust people to destroy the West. I think I'll probably go into this a little bit more on Odyssey or Subscribestar, because there's examples of talking to kids on these left wing Twitter kids about hot button issues like the Kathleen Kennedy Club, or the Hugo Boss, or whatever other boogeymen that the left were able to manipulate people into having an emotional Pavlovian response to, where to challenge their thinking on something, they're brainwashed into believing that they have to turn off their logical thought processes, and they'll just have an emotional response where they repeat their programming even in the face of counter evidence. They have a fear reaction to certain things because they know that the non-governmental machine can destroy their life if they don't virtue signal on some issues. And it's the old adage of, if you don't know your opponent's argument, you don't know your own. And you tell them and you go, okay, let's argue both sides of an issue, or some assumption that you have that you've been taught by a government school or by media Hollywood reinforcement. So let's examine the other side of it. It's like, what's the other side of the argument? And they look at you and are like, I can't believe you'd even ask that. It's like, well, that's how, I don't know, the Socratic method. That's how logic and reason. That's how ideas are sharpened, by arguing both sides of it. And they look at you and go, but there are no both sides to some issues. It's like, that's just the media brainwashing talking. For the sake of argument, can you argue both sides? Can you break out of that matrix? And getting them out of that matrix is a little bit challenging. But unfortunately, that's also the power of the censorship on YouTube. Is you just can't talk about you just can't use a bunch of words on YouTube, because the algorithm picks it up and it doesn't like it. So you just can't have honest conversations about things. Like what they did to YouTube is man, it's absolutely horrible. But because they made YouTube so bad, they made all these alternative platforms, which actually worked out pretty well for people like me. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.